I was never worried about January 6th.
By definition, this is a violent, sudden, unlawful seizure of power in the government. So this insurrection thing, I feel like so me or insurrection and coup, I feel like are almost go hand in hand, right? Because like I look at the word of insurrection and it says a violent uprising against an authority or government. So there was clearly an uprising. It was clearly violent. Only a few people died, but they were literally like beating the hell out of a police officer and all that nonsense. It was clearly an insurrection. And then I looked at the word coup, and it says a sudden, violent, and unlawful seizure of power from a government. And I think in this situation where it's like, okay, there wasn't this collective, controlled idea of what would exactly happen. There were plenty of people whose entire goal in that case was to quote unquote take back the government. And to take back the government, you had the person there with the zip ties. You had the people that were like literally chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." If like they had unfettered power to do whatever they wanted, do you believe that a lot of those people would have intentionally gone there, taken Mike Pence, and hung him on the gallows?
I think yes and no. The reason why, I guess to pull back a little bit to why I keep coup separate from insurrection is that I didn't believe that the individuals that were going into and wanting to do J6 had any influence insofar as military or government officials. So there wasn't I guess you could say, a rogue government that was like in the background trying to bring itself up. They were close. Like, I'm not gonna try and act like MTG and Matt Gaetz are doing a little bit of a side thing, but like the big thing for me with like a coup, it needs three things. The first is that there needs to like have like a target towards like the chief executive of government. In this case, it's like the president or the executive branch. And then, so that's one. Two, like the individuals are using like basically non-legal methods to go about seizing of power. And then the third for me, and the big one for me, is that there's military officials and or like rogue, quote unquote, rogue officials involved. And for me, it's like has to check all three of those boxes.
No, you're setting an insane bar. What you're saying, it sounds like what you're creating a distinction of is this wasn't a well thought out, well organized coup. And I'll give you that it wasn't well thought out, well organized. But the absence of people having direct intentions specific to the government doesn't mean that it's not a coup. Simply the people saying, look, if we as a collective, I have no idea how to do government. I have no idea how government works at all. What I'm saying is we as a collective are about to assassinate all the government officials or the people in whatever until they give the authority to the person that I believe should have it. At that point, that's a coup, right? And it's like, that's not a matter of, again, it's not some, how do I say it? It isn't them like having a plan for, okay, this is what we'll do with this body and this is how we'll control it. It's just no. This guy, the president, the highest official, is not the president in my opinion, and we're going here until they and demanding that they give the presidency to the person that I think. If that's the case, this would obviously be unlawful, and clearly at that point that would be a coup. If Trump was able to get power by means of the people, assassinating Mike Pence, demanding that the power goes, they're literally intending to zip tie the people inside of the thing. I don't understand how that is literally a coup, just done by idiots who don't know, who didn't have, who weren't collectivized in a way by an organized figure. That's it. It's just there was no organizing, like mastermind telling you this is what we're gonna do. Instead, they had an idiot who was smart enough to know if I say things directly, then we're gonna end up, I'm gonna get bodied. But when he's saying things like fight like hell, he understood what was happening. They had intelligence. They knew that there were people there who had guns sitting in a hotel room, literally thinking we're gonna seize power. So he knew that was it. It wasn't like other people knew that was happening and President Trump didn't know that. He knew. And when he was saying fight like hell, he was leaving it vague enough to let people fight that battle for him so that they could steal the power.
Do you think that, because again, I don't know, how do I word this thought? The thing that I'm a little stuck on is that while I do believe that let's remove insurrection and coup out for a second. So I'm gonna like explain what I saw. What I saw were a bunch of individuals who had similar goals but not clearly unified. And because those goals weren't clearly unified, there wasn't a set plan. So and like that plan could look like something like to do like a little bit of an analogy, because I'm streaming and people are watching and people might be confused in what I'm saying, is that let's say like you and I both want cereal, and that's our goal. Like we're hungry, we want cereal. And then I say, I want Cocoa Puffs. And you say, well, I want Fruit Loops. And it's like, okay, we both want cereal, but we don't have like the same idea of what cereal is, which I think that's closer to what happened on J6. However,
just to be clear, cereal is Trump being president and not Biden, right?
Sure, we could do it as that. So like cereal is like Trump being president and not Biden.
So if Biden was elected by like officially elected, like in the legal way, the only way to get Trump to be president would be illegal, and it would not happen peacefully, meaning it was absolutely going to be violent. And so by definition, it's a coup. And so even though they're going about it in different ways, they are obviously violently uprising against the government, attempting to give power to Trump. How was that? Like that's
yeah, I guess like and maybe I'm propaganda pilled here, where like the thing that I'm stuck on, I'm trying to make it clear what I'm stuck on is why I'm not at coup. I don't think I'm doing a good job at that, so I'm gonna try the best I can. Where I don't think that the individuals who had power and influence within that, I'm saying power and influence, I'm talking like about like the MTGs, like those who are in Congress who like did stuff. Like it's very clear that MTG did stuff in order to make sure that people knew what was going on. However, I don't think that they were, and this is being really charitable, but I don't necessarily think they even thought they were going to go that far. So they didn't actualize the entire thing. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't think that the institution of the United States are willing to do a coup, even if you were in power to try to overthrow it. It would need like a vast collective of people that I don't think was quite there at J6. It was close,
right? So
but
then
close is like 10% for me.
But that's arguing again that it just wasn't collectivized and it wasn't organized, but it was a coup.
For me, I need institution. I need
No, you don't. Let me just give you a quick scenario, really quick.
Sure.
Very uneducated, but very lethal idiots decide, I want to take this country. They go to where all of the most powerful people, like literally the entire legislative branch is, we go to Congress. I intend, the three of us, it's not well thought out, the three of us intend to lock Congress in the building and at gunpoint and force them into the idea that you will either pass legislation that makes so-and-so the president or you will die. At that point, it's just three individuals. Is that a coup?
Run that back to me one more time. I'm so sorry. I was typing something.
No problem.
Yeah.
Me and two other people, we decide we're going to come together. We have no idea how government works, not in the slightest. But what we do know is that Congress is like the legislative, portion of the government, one of the three powerful ones. And we decide we're going right now to the Capitol building where all of them are gathered. We're going to arrest all of them or hold them all at gunpoint and tell them, if you don't pass a law right now that says that whoever the freak we decide, I'm just going to be me. I'm going to be president. Then if you don't do that, we're going to kill you. At that point, would that be a coup?
I think in your framework, yes.
In what framework would it not? By definition, this is a violent, sudden, unlawful seizure of power in the government. That's what it is. I'm seizing the power, one of the three major powers, right? Executive, judicial, and legislative. I'm taking the entire legislative government, well, at least the Senate, right? So I'm taking that. That's a seizure of power, without a doubt, right? It's definitely unlawful, and it's definitely violent. I'm threatening them at murder. This is by definition a coup. Why are we like trying to skirt around the definition of the word?
Well, no, I hear what we're kind of stuck on, where I would grant it a coup, but again, maybe it doesn't matter in the longer run if we look at this deeper. Where the thing that I'm stuck on is that
it's not organized.
Is those no. If though, like, let's say, to load the hypothetical a little bit, if you and the other individuals were, whether it be military officials or a unified representative
I ignored
body.
that for a purpose. I ignored that for a reason. Because even if we're not,
Sure.
if it's just three of us and we violently control this power, at that point, it is a coup. Now, albeit a not well thought out coup. They're probably not going to give in to our demands, right? Like, whatever. It's a dumb thing, but it is a coup by definition, right? Like, you know what? I know how we do it. Let's break it down piece by piece. Like, because you do agree with the definition of sudden, violent, unlawful seizure of power from a government. So in this case, it would be sudden. We're just hopping up in there. So you don't disagree with the sudden part. It would be violent because we're threatening to kill them if they don't do what we're saying. It would obviously be unlawful, right? And then I would definitely be seizing power by getting all of freaking Congress, all of the Senate, right? So if that's the case, which part of the definition of a sudden, violent, unlawful seizure of power from a government doesn't apply?
Again, like, the thing that I guess what I'm disagreeing on is the definition here.
Okay, perfect. But according to the definition that's there, because I don't believe in proprietary definition, according to the definition there, it is absolutely a coup, right?
Yeah, if I were to say, like, again, and this might be a different, and maybe this is a better conversation of why I'm stuck on this, where if with the definition that you presented, and if we're saying that, like, if we're agreeing on the definition unilaterally, then it would be a coup then. The thing that I'm stuck on, to be clear here, is that I think that in order for people to kind of like clearly understand what was happening, is that there needed to be that factor of whether it be members of Congress who were clearly in on it and active participants, military officials in on it and actively participants of it, or even like a sort of like MAGA plus, if that makes sense. Like,
all you're defining is organization. So what you're basically, again, this is why I keep throwing this word in. Okay, let's just distinguish between an organized coup and an unorganized coup. An organized coup has all of the things that you're talking about, where it's like a well thought out, well planned. We have literal military officials such that we'll be able to exact our will, etc., right? We have like detailed plans on who will be the leader once we're finished, who's going to be like whatever, which pieces of power we're going to leave, or we're going to give these people the option to stay with it. That sounds like a really well organized coup, is what I'm defining right there. Now, the unorganized coup would be the thing that I'm talking about, where we don't have the military officials, we don't have a well thought out plan, we don't have like actual government bodies that we're going to be whatever. None of these things are there, but by definition it's a coup. So now what we have in January 6th is very obviously a coup, because again, while you don't have the organized folks necessarily, what you do have, although you do have even people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and other people in Congress who are actually working with them, right? And you do have like people within the police force who are actually siding with them, etc. But just ignoring all that, if just the collective people are intending to do this thing, and there are nefarious actors who are literally believing that by doing this, we are fighting for the country such that the country will belong to the person who I believe should be president, and I'm aka seizing the power of the presidency, which if that's the collective goal of a lot of those people, then that is by definition a coup.
An unorganized coup. Yeah, and I think maybe that's where, because I would agree. Okay, so if we're pulling out, because here's what I'm hearing that it's possible that there are two representations of what a coup could be, and then in terms of us talking right now, right, that there's like the unorganized route, where while all the things that I described exist, they don't exist in a way that's focused. And I think the way that I'm articulating it might sound like, I'd say articulate, Jesus. The way that I'm talking about it makes it sound like a big thing for me is organization. And what I mean by organization is that when all those things come to be, they're able to use the legal process and whatever, like I'm saying legal process, I'm saying just broadly the mechanisms of the institutions to solidify that. So like, let's say like Brad and Jane want to overthrow the government and they go do all the things that you described, and then they force Mike Pence or even force Congress to introduce legislation to delegitimize Joe Biden as president. That to me, I guess, would be an organized coup where they're able to through, and again, like there's a lot to that, but
but they're missing all the things you talked about. They're missing the military people. They're missing all the things that you defined that would make it organized are not there.
No, but I'm saying that's what I mean by organization. Like by organization, I mean they're able to use the institutions to actualize their needs.
That's what I just said. That was what I said originally, and the thing that I was talking about with me and my three buddies. The idea was to hold Congress accountable and make them literally pass laws that make whoever I decide, myself in this situation, become president. At that point, then I'm using one of the legal institutions, or to either pass the law or die. At that point, it would be the exact same thing. There's no distinction from what you just said and what I said.
Well, I think there is insofar as, and maybe this is a force thing then, because. And again,
every coup functions from force.
Right. But I guess like, and this is, I don't know what the word is, and maybe this is like really semantical, where let's approach it a different way. Let me approach this a different way. If I went to, let's do the library analogy because I'm toxic. Let's say I have a book and I want you to, oh God, if you know, you know. Okay, so I have a book, right? And I give you, and like you come up to me and say, actually, let me be really toxic. Let me say, hey, I have a city bike. And you come to me and you say, I want that city bike. And I say, no. And you say, give me that city bike or I'm going to XYZ, things I can't say on Twitch. And I go, damn. And I have like it's very clear that you are going to do this. It's like, it's basically like I can see the persona of Suge Knight behind you. And I'm like, okay. And then I give you that bike. A difference that I would have in that is sort of like the intentionality of organized versus unorganized, or not really organized versus unorganized, that ignore that part. Like if you came to me and said the same thing and I said, well, I was going to give this to you anyway, because like we're both in on you needing this bike, that to me would be the difference. And then if I were to explain this in a legislative standpoint, or like in a coup, quote unquote, standpoint, it would be a situation where Mike Pence is already in on it long before you come in.
Oh, but hold on. There are plenty of coups that happen where none of the people in power, like military coups, where none of the people in power, like in any of the other areas, are actually in on it. Like, I think you're creating these really obscure, unfounded, like constraints, like to make this thing work, when in reality these things don't need to be there. If the military decided right now we're taking every piece of government from every other governmental body, at that point it would be a coup, regardless of whether or not anyone else is in on it. And then again, in the case where my two friends and I, if we go there and we seize that power, you yourself said, hey, at that point, like once we use the legislative branch or the, whatever to create whatever, then that becomes like a coup. Like then again, that wouldn't need any other people being in on it. Like it feels like what's happening in this conversation is like, it's like, well, the definition is point blank, period. Okay. All right. Well, then let's think about like a possible extra constraint that would possibly make it more fit. Like, and it's like, none of these things matter. At the end of the day, the people were there. storming the Capitol. They chose that building because that's where the power resides. They were doing it when the presidency was about to be established because they wanted to stop the presidency from happening. They were literally going there with the intention, some of them, of truly wanting to murder Mike Pence. Some of them wanting to literally tie up Congress members with the intention of forcing them to give the presidency back to Trump. Some people were literally waiting nearby with guns, thinking it might be an all-out war if things got serious, if the people inside of the Capitol building succeeded, right? So, like, the idea is, all of these things constitute the idea that they were literally trying to seize power. That's what they were. And I think everyone knows that's what a coup is. It's seizure of power illegally. And it's almost always going to be violent if it's because power is not going to give up power peacefully. It just almost never happens. So that means then at this point, that's what that is. It's a coup. Now, you can say, I don't feel like it was going to be a successful coup. Give you that. I don't think it was organized well enough. Give you that. I don't think it was concentrated and focused. Give you that. All of those things. So it's an unorganized, not concentrated, probably not likely to be successful coup, but it's a coup. There's no way around that, Joe.
Oh man, I really like, there's two examples I want to give. But I'm not, like, I didn't know this was a conversation to be happening, so I don't want to do the Twitch thing of just butchering through my brain to pull this up. But something that comes, like, two situations that come to mind with me was what happened in Turkey and then what happened in Egypt. And basically, when I look at what happened, like, and again, just kind of the TLDR, and I apologize in advance if I'm forgetting pieces of this, because this happened in, like, I think 2012 or 2013. But basically, their army chief, God, what's his name? Something Fatah. I think his name is Fatah, where he was able to remove Egypt's president. But he was a member of the military. So not only was this a government individual, this was also a government entity that was able to use his power within that to not only take out the president that was currently in power, but also write a new constitution. And maybe that's where like the success line is where,
that's it.
Where
You're
we're
just
at.
defining a successful coup, but
right.
An unsuccessful coup is still a coup, or an attempted coup.
Yeah, and maybe I'd grant that. Like, in the sake of what we're talking about, maybe I'd grant that. And someone said something in chat, because I'm getting tagged left and right. Danny said, coups are only legal if you win the government. And maybe that's where I'm getting stuck on. Maybe that's where, like, we're getting stuck on, or I'm getting stuck on when it comes to success and otherwise, where I think that for coups, and maybe that's where I am stuck, where coups for me might just be like a final action or like an end result, but then maybe that doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't, because then you would be talking about, like, again, attempted coups. An attempted coup doesn't get the final result. What happens if, like, before the guy was able to do it, some person in his party assassinated him and said, no, we're not going this direction, and then they, like, maintain their power? It's still a coup, like an attempted coup. Like,
sure.
Because remember, we can put modifiers in front of the definition, which which again, we're not going to do a proprietary definition. If we put modifier, an attempted coup is an attempted, sudden, violent, an unlawful seizure of power from a government, right? And so if that's what your goal is, then yeah, that's an attempted coup. An organized coup is just an organized, sudden, violent, and unlawful power, whatever, right? A disorganized coup is just a not organized, meaning people aren't really, like, functioning together in some sort of system as they try to do this sudden, violent, and unlawful seizure, right? Mm-hmm. All of the, like, you can put whatever modifier you want in front of the word, right? A successful or an unsuccessful, an organized or an unorganized, a concentrated, a focused, like, whatever word you want, but, like, it's a coup. Yeah. A coup is a coup. Like, I feel like the thing
let me ask you.
Go ahead. Lastly, really quick. I think the thing that I do very often, whenever I'm trying to have conversations, politics can be messy. There's always so many moving pieces and so on and so forth. I try to distill things into the things that I know, right? Because if ever I want to have a functioning conversation with someone, that means that I have to be able to communicate in a way that you understand what I'm saying and that I can understand what you're saying. And the only way we do that is if we at least subscribe to something like definitions, ideas, concepts. So for example, if I'm trying to talk to you about socialism, but I don't think socialism has anything to do with the means of production. I think socialism just has to be with being friendly. We're not able to have a realistic conversation if you're operating from a different definition. So in the same sense,
Gotcha.
Once we establish a basic definition, then we should be able to be honest with ourselves enough to be able to say, this is what this is. Now, I might want to modify and say, well, I want to distinguish that this one was not an intelligent coup or whatever words you want to do, but we should be able to really, really quickly with the definition right in front of our face and the example of what exactly happened, be able to come to the conclusion, yes, this was an attempted coup. And then move forward to a broader conversation after we've come to the fact, because that's what that is, man.
Sure. And I guess like because I think, let me make sure I'm understanding this clearly. Because this might be where we're having a conversational snag. I don't even think we're having a conversational snag. I think we both respect each other enough, and we're not gonna fucking go hard on the bait.
Yeah.
I'm not Lactoid.
Yeah. Lactoid, he's my favorite punching bag. I love the guy. He's good. He's a good person. Good person.
He's a funny guy. A sidebar. I'm gonna get back to the thing I was gonna say is that like I like how sometimes you'll just go super hard on him, and he'll just be like, okay. It's like, what?
Yep.
It's like he's the kind of person who like you would hit him like the dirtiest mix up ever, and he'd be like, "Oh, good game, man." And it's like, "Huh?
No. Be angry. Be angry. What are you doing?"
And then you see him in the back just playing casuals, and it's like, and then it starts getting with you. It's like, why isn't he mad? Like, yeah. Anyway, I guess like the thing that I won't say I get stuck on, but the thing that I don't mind is the functioning of two different definitions within a conversation. Because I think that like on one hand, people see things differently, and being able to explain to somebody what they're seeing is important. But I do agree with you that sometimes what can happen with people is that those differences of a perspective can just railroad a conversation. Does that make sense?
Somewhat. Here's the deal. We can see things differently. The thing that we should be not seeing differently is the definition. Because again, that's like one of the fundamental pieces of the communication. So we shouldn't be seeing our communication different. We shouldn't be seeing like the words we're using describing. Now you can have a different idea of what, again, you might say, this is why this thing was unorganized. And I can say, no, I think it was pretty organized. It was just that it was organized, in this way, right? Like that's a difference in idea. It's not a difference in definition and understanding of the word organization. The difference in difference in belief or different of perspective about what organization looks like. We can have difference in perspectives, but we shouldn't have basic geometry. Like these are our presets, right? Like our what do you call them? The foundational definitions. What the not the theorems, whatever. Either way, these are the
like a fighting game analogy, right? Like if I say like, oh, I knocked you down and now you're in a mix-up. And then if I say, well, mix-up is only when the character is not jumping in. And it's like, well, hang on.
Right. It's like, well, what? No, then at this point, we're having a total different idea. Whatever. My point, the whole point is like, as long as we have those, as long as the words we're using are making sense, then we can get into whatever other conversation. Like that's the easiest way. Because again, and the reason why I become such a stickler for definitions is because nothing's worse than arguing with someone for a long time and then coming to realize, oh, we just really didn't even understand what that meant.
And then maybe because Danny just said something, not to cut you off. Danny said something that I actually think that might be closer to both. I'm going to try. It might be closer to both of us, where he said a seizure of a government by means other than those laid down in the country's constitution or by action from the ruling body. And then he says like, that's a coup. I think
I don't like proprietary definitions, because then like that automatically, like, we're like getting away from the fact that we already understand it's really, really concise. It's like 5-6 words, and we know that it has to be violent. It's seizure of power. Like, I don't understand why we would need like to change it. Like, we know what this is. Like, we're getting further away from the every time we start trying to like do a proprietary definition, we get further away from the truth. Because even if I granted that specific definition and you and I had a conversation that got very, very much into the weeds of what that is, if you and I agreed, and we move just ever so slightly away from that, then obviously downstream we can get greater and greater extrapolations, and then that means any person who comes in and sees the conversation that doesn't understand that we've extrapolated because of the fact that we've like deviated slightly from the definition, now that person is lost. Whereas I want to make sure that we're always understanding that there is an authority here. We do get exactly what the freak we're communicating, so that we're never lost. I never want to be lost in the weeds. It's hard enough getting people to understand things when we agree on the definitions. So going proprietary and then not understanding, well, wait, what did you mean by specifically when you said a constitution? Because a constitution, like, it's like, no, we're not doing that. Yeah.
So let me ask you this then, because maybe this is the conversation that exists here. Well, there's a part of this that's interesting to me, and I think I don't know what you got going on, but I have a little bit of time to dig into this.
I'm good.
So, because I want to pull away for a sec and then try to pull back. So something that and you know this, like, I'm trying to pay attention to what these fucking white women are doing in schools, and something that I started just getting at peace with is that, like, when I hear like a soccer mom talk about CRT or a soccer mom talk about gender ideology, like, I know where she's coming from and what she's saying. And something that kind of frustrates me is when people hear what soccer, and again, like, soccer mom is just in this case just an idealized person. I'm just using it as a placeholder for white women here, where it's like they like, you'll get people who like play the game of like arguing the definition, and like, well, actually CRT is not this, or actually gender ideology is not this. And my thing is that I don't care about that. Like, I care about like trying to see, like, okay, what are they seeing? What within it is true, and then what within it is bullshit, and then from there, like, okay, what's the nonsense, and like, let's work on the nonsense and clarifying what the nonsense is. And that's where I think maybe it's not proprietary definitions, but I think that like that can sometimes be a good thing to do in conversations.
No. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you what. Someone tells me this is CRT. And I'm going to tell you that's not CRT. What is CRT? And we're going to get right down to the bottom of what CRT is, and then you're going to tell me what CRT is, and then I'm going to tell you, nope, here's what CRT is, and here's the definition. This is exactly what CRT is. None of that applies to this situation. And then you're going to go, if you're honest at all, you're going to go, okay, well then by definition it's not CRT. Right. So then it's something else. Okay, maybe you just don't like the racial framing of it. Now we're past the CRT thing, because we're not going to paint CRT poorly based off of your ridiculous interpretation or some nonsense. What we're going to talk about is the thing that you don't like, and the thing you don't like is them talking about race and like making demonizing whiteness apparently to your kid, right? Like, maybe that's what the thing is, and I'll give you that. You don't like them demonizing whiteness to your kid. That's not CRT, because if that's the case, why don't I just, hey, well, they're teaching children about sexuality in the 10th grade, or I mean in the 5th grade. That's CRT. Why wouldn't I do that? Because obviously we understand words have definitions, words have meanings. Let's use the words appropriately and actually understand what the hell we're talking about. Again, otherwise, if I grant you that ground, someone else not privy to this, and you know how uneducated some of these soccer moms can be, if those other soccer moms hear this and then they go, well, I agree with what she's saying, I don't like them demonizing whiteness, etc., etc. Now that soccer mom is also against CRT, and I don't want everyone to be against CRT, because I think CRT contextualized for the appropriate grades is a good thing. So it's never ever beneficial to grant somebody a faulty definition where they're using a misnomer or characterizing something inappropriately in order to move forward with the conversation. It's always best, and I rarely use absolutes, it is always best to get clarity, get an understanding, so that way we can move forward in a conversation, especially if this conversation is going to be being had by more than just myself.
So then, if I'm hearing this correctly, the pulling back to the insurrection conversation, while you might agree with what I was describing, by me using that definition, or like the function of the definition that I was using, that's not going to stick. And then by that not sticking, that's going to potentially confuse people for you. Because while you might, maybe like you might grant ground of what I'm saying, but then like the minute we both agree on two separate definitions, then things might get obfuscated.
For sure. And then there's another thing. I think sometimes words have enough power in them that they immediately trigger appropriately the way people should feel about them. And I think once we start taking away words, like, for example, they didn't want to use the word insurrection. They don't want to use the word coup. They don't like, and they want to do these things because the more that they can do that, they can somewhat palliate all of the people like on their side or the opposition. Right? And so it's like, no. We have to understand exactly what this is so that everyone can remember the disgustingness that it was, so that way we can be more concentrated and have our guard up when the individual who I believe was causing it to happen tries to run for president again. It'd be like, for example, if somebody was, doing some violent sexual assault, I don't want to sit there and be like, well, look, okay, what it was it was a miscommunicated understanding of power within a sexual dynamic. No. I'm not going to euphemize this. This needs to be exactly understood what it is, because when something is negative, you want to fully define it so that people can immediately get appropriately triggered, not the way SJWs use it, but where it can say, oh, this is really bad. I know what a coup is. I know what the end result is, and I can associate that with Donald Trump. That needs to remain. I think it is very powerful, and the more we start trying to euphemize it, and it's just people start, they don't remember the atrocity that Donald Trump was and the danger that he actually represented to our country.
So then I grant you this then, because I think I can kind of centralize like where I'm at on this. I'll use, and we're staying on coups because that was like how we got here, where I think, if I were to grant like just what you said from the very beginning, if we're just functioning on the just like definition of coup, if somebody were just to go and Google and look it up, something, then I'll agree with that. But I shouldn't say but it's like, because it's not really like connected with each other. From there, then the question comes, for me at least, what happened in January 6th, and what makes this different from other examples of coups? So like if I were to connect from just generally, like what can make a coup successful, if there is coordination and support from members of the institution.
Sure.
And what makes what happened at J6 unorganized is that while they had support, they didn't have the support enough to actually have anything happen in an actualized way.
Sure. So basically what you're saying is, first off, you can have that entire conversation without having to try to create a proprietary definition or lie to yourself about what coup means. You can easily say, this was an attempted coup, and these are all of the reasons why it failed. They didn't have the support of the other institutions. It wasn't really organized enough, and so on and so forth. You can do all of that. Denying the truth is never necessary in order to have a conversation. The truth will set you free. In fact, the more quickly you concede, yes, this is obviously a coup, the quicker you get to, this is why I didn't like the idea of calling it a coup, even though I now see that it's a coup. Because when I think of coup, I think of these things. I understand that these things are not necessary to be a coup, but this is what makes successful coups. And so because these things weren't present, this is why I didn't think it would ever succeed, which is why I was reluctant to call it a coup, though it is a coup, right? And it's like, oh, sure. All of those things weren't there, and they were a bunch of idiots. They didn't have enough weapons necessarily for whatever. They weren't organized. We can have that whole conversation, and none of it requires you to deny a coup. A coup is a coup.
Yeah, because here's my thing about it, where I don't want to say I was never worried about January 6th. Like, I never like one of the things that a lot of people, and I can say this take now. I think it's long enough where I can comfortably say this on the internet, where I look back to it and people like look back to it and like it is something that we should take seriously. I don't want to diminish that. That's something that we ought to take seriously. But at the same time, I never was like, while Donald Trump is a scary individual, I don't think America, as institutions are currently constructed, are even able to be actualized in the way that Donald Trump wanted it to be. Because even when he was up there doing all those speeches, and it's like you don't give up when there's theft involved, and it's like you're literally you're second fiddle. Like, and the only way, like, now grant, like, I'll give this, where if he started doing some like weird stuff as he was still the president before there was that transfer, then I would be concerned. Where if there was like everything with the organizational aspect of it, like the route, like what the rally is, like we're gonna have a rally on this day where they're swearing it in. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. Bop, 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 bop. And then that would be an example. It would probably still fail because I think the military is kind of subservient to itself. Not subservient, loyal to itself. But even then, that's all like where I think it'll be a successful coup. Like the conditions of it being successful, rather. And that's not all of it. This is like one part of it.
Sure.
Where
I think to say you weren't worried, I think it's just like I think that's hindsight, because I think in reality, if Congress weren't able to get like into a safe location and some of those people got their hands on them, it would have been a very long-lasting hostage situation where some people might have actually died.
Right.
And so then in that case, then I think that there's more than enough reason to be worried. I didn't know the inner workings of Congress. I didn't know that they had like hidden chambers and things that they could get into in order to remain safe. Like, or what about the dangers of like actually getting Nancy Pelosi's laptop and being able to use that to like get information and stuff that shouldn't be had? Like, there's all sorts of dangers that actually happen. People actually died in this scenario. Right. So like,
and I don't want to diminish that about. Yeah, I guess what I mean by worry, to kind of like elaborate on that a little bit, is that I don't think, because Danny Boy said, if my contention of J6 is about the probability of success, and it's a bit more complicated than that for me, where I didn't necessarily see the Donald Trump presidency as this overt fascist shift that people were afraid of. Like, I'm more worried about DeSantis than I am towards Trump. And by worried about DeSantis is that DeSantis functioned in Florida in a way that is a little, not alarming, but he has a lot of power as a governor in Florida, more power than most governors in other states. And then he's somebody who has that power trip of being the Florida governor, and then he might function that way as president, where like if like basically Donald Trump saying I'm gonna run America like it's a business is less alarming to me than Ron DeSantis saying I'm gonna run the country, I'm gonna run the United States like it's Florida. That to me is a bit more like, oh God.
Well, see, but we're looking at two different things though, right? Because like you're looking at these things in absence of an insurrection, because the country, the presidency becomes significantly more fascistic once you've literally taken it through means of a coup, right? And so in that case, like just comparing Donald Trump's presidency to Ron DeSantis' governorship are already were like crazy mismatch, and then ignoring the fact that like you were going to do so by forcibly being violent with the powers of government in order to get to seize the power. I would imagine the more violent a power is in its seizure, the more violence is going to be required in order to abdicate it, right? And so I would say that if they violently take the government, that they're not going to peacefully give it away. And so then at that point is when now we have a much greater problem. So again, I in no way, shape, or form. Now I'm not comparing the presidency to the governorship. What I'm comparing is the violent coup there's no comparison. There's just a violent coup, and the idea that the following presidency obtained by that violent coup would have been absolutely disastrous for our democracy and for our country.
And maybe we're so here's something that I'm curious about. I don't know why I led with that. I could just ask you, what is your opinion of Donald Trump as a politician?
I mean, he's just a gross person, dog whistled a whole bunch of nonsense, just not probably good for the country, probably particularly divisive. That's completely in
Gotcha.
absence of the coup, though. It has nothing to do with the coup. That's just
Right.
that's just,
No,
just him as a person. Yeah.
yeah. The reason why I asked that is, I don't know. We're already well at this point. My channel's still up, and we're rolling. My, what are your thoughts of Donald Trump as a? I want to say, I don't want to say his competency, but his facility to govern, his capacity to govern.
I feel like the government is designed in such a way that so many people, like so many bodies and things, like kind of function, right? Like I don't ever want to just diminish it and say he's just a figurehead, because I think that's too far. But I mean, I think it definitely points in the direction of what I'm getting at, in the sense that the president is incredibly powerful, but we still do have like the legislative and executive and judicial branches to like kind of control different aspects. We have the FDA, which functions, right? We have the state governments, which function of their own things. And there's a limitation of power on what the president can do even to the states. Now, you can obviously coerce them with like lack of funding and things like that. But ultimately, there still are limitations on his power. And so I think, you know, because of that, like his incompetency doesn't change the fact that it's dangerous, because what he'll do is he puts all of the powerful people, he elects his cabinet. Right, like having Ivanka Trump have a position of power with her lack of education or lack of information or lack of know-how, whatever the freak word, like that is a dangerous thing. I think him like dog whistling all the racism and stuff from such a powerful position, like emboldening all of the white nationalists and things like that, that's also a particularly dangerous thing. It's not necessarily about his competency to govern or to run the country. It's more so just about what that symbol in that position of power does to the rest of the country.
Sure. The reason why I asked that is because something that, and we might be in agreement here, something that I was initially worried about when Donald Trump won, because I was worried. And this is where my worry was. My worry was like, oh, this man has the foresight, like, because I thought of it from a business perspective, because I don't think Donald Trump is a good business person. But something that I learned from dealing with him with Trump Bedminster is that, sure, Trump Bedminster is technically like an entity of Donald Trump, but that venue is run very well. So much so that Donald Trump can just kind of walk in and do what he has to do, and it's like, oh, this is owned by Trump, whatever. Where I thought that was what he was going to do as president. I thought that he was going to have these sort of placeholders. I won't say placeholders, that sounds like it kind of diminishes what I'm trying to say here. Is I thought he was going to get just basically like the right-wing conservative assassins when it came to what he wanted politically, where individuals that like as a collective, they're terrifying, but as separate, they're equally as terrifying. Like the best way I could give it for people who are not understanding what I'm saying is like, imagine if somebody made like a fighting game team and had full money and full reign and bought out like Justin Wong, Chris G, Sonic Fox, like basically took every single top player and handpicked, like, we're gonna get the top two from this game, and then made that a team where it's like the team separately as individuals is very, very good, but then the team as collective is also very good. And that's divorced from the individual who has the power and influence, if that makes sense. I thought that was gonna happen with Trump. And then it turned out that like that didn't. It got scary. The end got scary. Like when Jeff Sessions decided to be Jeff Sessions, and then we got William Barr back, I was like, oh, like LA riots, William Barr? I thought we were done with him.
Right.
Because I think Donald Trump started getting, and maybe it's what he realized, where it's like, why don't I just get the strongest individuals of like the upholding conservative institutions and just have them run their thing?
Yeah.
Where I don't think like
That's
Yeah,
so
go for it.
that's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean though. Like it's the danger is not in like what in him as an individual. It's in all of the people that he elects and the people that he puts in like in this position of power. For example, when Obama became president and he puts like the ex-head of like Monsanto or one of the like super duper might have been president of Monsanto, you put him as like one of the key positions in the FDA. It's like, well, this is a dangerous thing to do, right? It's not about what things you sign per se. But that in and of itself, your cabinet members and the people that you put into positions of power, that's where the danger comes. That's where most of the danger came from, Donald Trump.
And like, an Oculus brought up the idea that he attempted to lift COVID's lockdown before the first wave had ever finished, when the death rate was surging into the low thousands. The thing that would have made Donald Trump scary is that if he had somebody that wasn't Anthony Fauci, like somebody who was like basically like, I can imagine a scenario where a president could have people in place that were all in agreement, and everyone's like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Like kind of like what Governor Murphy did with schools. I don't know how Gavin Newsom was doing in California, but basically like watching Governor Murphy gaslight people on COVID numbers was really, really weird. Like, I don't know how it was like for you, but towards the back end, like 2021-ish, there was a lot of like, we're fine, this is okay, we're fine, this is okay. And like, you're looking at the numbers and going like, are we looking at the same thing? Does he have better information than we do that he's giving to the public? Because basically what we saw for a small moment was as things were like leaning back, things were started surging up, essentially around this time during the summer. Mm-hmm. And I was like thinking, oh, this is going to be terrible when we go back to school. Because basically like I had the feeling of like, oh, they're seeing these low numbers. They're agreeing with these low numbers, but they're ignoring the fact that of course there's low numbers. Everybody's at home. Right. And then the minute school starts, it's like shoot. And like I guess to tie that back in that I think I just and maybe I don't know, like I don't think Donald Trump is able to give people that kind of power. Like if DeSantis lost, I don't see Trump giving him a cabinet position. And even though I don't think it would work the other way around, I don't think a former sitting president can be in another president's cabinet. I don't think that you can do that. But even if you could, I don't think that DeSantis would tap Trump for an advisory role or some type of role within the government.
Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think because one of the things that like really, really bothered me so heavily was like it felt like like again we were being gaslit to some degree because like do you remember like the arguments where people were trying to say it wasn't an insurrection? Do you remember that? Like we're like sure, like a lot of Republicans refused. They were just like, no, it's not. It wasn't an insurrection. And it's like, in what way would it not be? Like what distinguishes it? So that was already like a fear to some degree.
Was that giving you vibes when I was half ranting?
Who me? No, not at all. It's just I think I instantly, the second I feel like someone is downplaying the severity of what happened, it's like, oh no, we gotta get that get that straight. Because
do you think I was at the start of it?
You absolutely were. It's not an opinion. That's like to not refer, not. I'm not trying to, but just to not refer to a coup as a coup, and to say like, yeah, it wasn't a coup. It was just more like I think that's automatically a downplay because I think coup is again one of those words that appropriately triggers people. It's the same way like the violent sexual assault, the R word. When you say that word, it immediately carries with it a bunch of like, oh, really, really bad, really, really negative. Oh my God, okay, now I understand the severity, right? Like it's just, or murder. Like that's one of those words where it's like, it immediately carries with it a bunch of weight. So then if someone's murdering someone and we're like, no, look, we're gonna call it, he manslaughtered him, he slaughtered him. And it's like, well, I wanted to, like if, for example, they were gonna try to say that with Derek Chauvin, it's like, that was murder.
Escape and floating too much.